Big fan. I've been following you for a while.
Cheers, man.
Could you tell me a little bit about yourself, how you got into video in the first place in 2018? You started the company. Tell me a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, man, 100%. So I started my first production company when I was 21. I started that in 2018. I did that for about 5 years or so. Built a big team of us. Had an absolute laugh with it. Worked with some of the biggest brands in the world. Probably made I don't even know, over 3,000 different videos. And we felt like the industry was becoming quite stagnant. It was very commoditized. There were lots of other production companies kind of being made. And for perspective, when I started, there were 4,000 production companies in the UK when I first started in 2018. By the time that we were looking to change things up in 2023, there were 16,500. So it had literally four times itself in about 5 years, which is crazy. So the demand did increase slightly, but the saturation of people supplying that service also just grew and grew and grew. So it kind of became a bit of an industry based on price and who was cheapest and who could do it the fastest. So it's very commoditized. So we kind of come up with this plan to rebrand the business and kind of kick it in the balls a little bit and launch with Odyssey, this cool new fresh agency brand. And just very quickly, I kind of fell out of love with the industry. It just kind of felt like it's changed so much. Integration of AI and people kind of competing on price. It wasn't why I started it in the first place. I started it because I wanted to make cool videos for cool people and help their business to grow. Because I have a real passion for helping people. But it just kind of felt like we'd be hired for a project and then we then have to go through tender versus five other agencies the next time, even though we'd already built that relationship with that brand. It just felt very kind of tick box. We were kind of binned as an agency by a lot of people because somebody could do it cheap. And I just didn't like that level of relationship. It's not how I do
Yeah.
business with people. So made the decision to cut the team, cut the business. So we shut down the business. I let go of all my staff. And I kind of started to build what I really wanted to do, which was a big community for smaller businesses to help them to be able to create better videos in-house as opposed to hiring expensive agencies and working with lots of different freelancers and feeling overwhelmed with the whole thing. So that's a very brief story, mate, but it gives a bit of context to what I've been doing and essentially where I am now.
Well, that's very interesting. And I didn't realize that crazy growth from 2018 to 23. So you stopped producing at 23?
We stopped producing in 20 end of 24.
Okay.
So throughout 23, we were still working with brands. Then we launched Odyssey. We got lots of new clients from the hype. But I think as we grew, so we grew to a team of 10 in the southeast UK, which for a video production company is like it's like a medium-sized production company. Most of them tend to be 1 to 5 people maybe. So we kind of reached about 10 full time. And I just didn't enjoy it, mate. That's all. I wanted to make videos for brands, and I think the only way I could see the business going is we hire more staff, but then to hire more staff, we need to have the costs. We need to get more clients. And it just kind of became this ladder of get new clients, get new staff, get more clients to pay for the staff, get more staff to service the clients. And it was just this never-ending thing, all whilst in the UK, we were going through a bit of a cost of living crisis. So all the staff wanted to increase salaries and a bit of cultural conflict as well. It's the first team that I'd ever grown. I'm not the best people manager. And I don't think maybe my style of leadership was the best at the time. Sort of long hours, late nights, graft, 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 graft. Which I can withstand, but I appreciate that maybe other people who aren't maybe more entrepreneurial don't have that oomph, or it's just not what they want to do in their life, which I totally get because it's not for the faint-hearted. But yeah, we were doing productions until we closed on in May 24. May 24.
Got it. And you mentioned Odyssey. Is that what you're doing now? Because or I'm familiar with the Content Club, right?
Yeah.
When did you start that? How did you get into that? And tell me where it's like progression of that side of the things.
Yeah, good question. So Odyssey was the rebrand. So we
Mm.
started in 2018 as V21. So video, I started when I was 21 years old. That's what it stood for. Really cheesy. Did that for 5 years. Then rebranded into Odyssey, which was then a bit more of a sort of impactful agency kind of vibe. Very, very professional, very well branded, slick website, all this sort of stuff. Did that for about a year and a half, and then we cut that off in May 24. So I basically spent from May Well, to be fair, probably a couple of years before that, thinking about it in terms of ideas. If we did shut the business down, what would I do? And then in October 24, I launched the Content Club, which is what I'm full time on now. So essentially, I kind of shut the agency down to go full time and I guess pursue what I feel is the new passion, or well, it's a passion I've had for a long time, but it's the new mission, to genuinely help other people kind of better their own content, market their business, build the lives that they want to live, without paying a fortune for agencies. Because in my opinion, I just don't think you need them anymore, especially production companies. I think there's a time and a place for very high production content, but I think we're moving into the era of much more social focused, kind of personal branding, very authentic UGC film stuff on a phone, that outperforms the very professional, premium, polished stuff. And I just think, depending on who you are, that polished stuff just looks a little bit too try hard and a bit too salesy. And I think most people have kind of gone, we've kind of caught on to this now. You're trying to sell us something. I'd much
Yeah.
rather watch Martin the electrician do a behind the scenes of his electrician business on YouTube. That's, you kind of get what I mean. But yeah.
I think with the rise of AI, people are more I think I see the explosion of the thirst for authentic content, what you're teaching people how to produce, that I think is going to even be a lot stronger demand for that now with the rise of AI. Are
Mm.
you seeing that in the recent 12 months?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, if you're not using AI, I think you're at a massive disadvantage. I use it
Yeah.
every day to some degree, whether it's through Sora or content creation or editing support or copywriting or ideas or whatever it is. I will implement it into what I do. Not necessarily to cheat the system, but it just saves time on the very
It's
mundane,
it's a
very,
tool. Yeah.
yeah, 100%. It's the very laborious stuff that is incredibly time consuming that I will automate to some degree. If there's something that needs my personal input, or it needs my strength, which is my ideas and my creativity as a person, that's not automated. That's only done by myself. But things like, I don't know, project management or email automation, like those sorts of things, I'll automate to some degree, or LinkedIn to some degree, I'll automate in terms of connections or outreach or whatever it is, right? So I think you should be kind of like yin and yang with AI to really win with it.
Got it. I actually tried AI. I'm utilizing a whole bunch of different tools, obviously, like you, in different spaces to help kind of leverage and improve my time value. I tried
Mm.
actually 80% of my time is made is video editing. I tried creating some transcriptions and having it kind of create a rough cut or an outline. It wasn't quite there yet. I think it's lacking that emotional side because when I watch somebody talking, most of our work is really interview-based
Mm.
stuff. There's something about the human connection which it still can't. You can take the words, but I'm not gonna be able. It's not gonna be able to see whether or not that works in the context emotional connection. So going back to the point of strength, it might get there eventually, but it's not there quite yet.
Yeah, totally agree.
You leverage LinkedIn, right, for growing your business. Have you used other platforms, or is LinkedIn your main go-to?
Yeah, no, so LinkedIn, I would say, is the main one and has been the main one for a long time. But I will put weekly YouTube videos out. I've done that for about a year. I used to do a lot of TikTok and Instagram, but I kind of cut those out as I became sort of all encumbered with consuming as opposed to creating on those platforms. So I
Right.
just kind of felt like I was wasting a lot of precious time on what I could be doing, which was adding value and serving my audience as opposed to consuming from other people. So I will now do 3 to 5 posts on LinkedIn a week, and I will do one really strong, very value stacked YouTube video every Thursday, is what I commit to. And it
Okay,
works.
and
It works really well.
you're taking that long form video and putting it on LinkedIn as well, correct?
Yes. So yeah, long forms will go out on Thursday on LinkedIn, and a bit of a breakdown in terms of value. I'll often add some sort of lead magnet into that as well, in terms of if you like this long form video and you want to start your video journey, or you want to make better videos yourself, here's a free resource, or here's a newsletter that you can join, or something to kind of get people biting on that. Whereas on YouTube, it's much more around searchability, SEO, kind of evergreen bank and sort of a vault of free content that builds the rapport and builds that authority. So everything I do is it's very intentional. It's very strategic. It's not kind of like I've gone, oh, I'm going to start doing YouTube and then I'm just posting YouTube videos. I'm doing it to do something very specific. And it takes time. YouTube I've been doing for a year. Well, I'd say 6 months properly, but probably a year on and off with different categories and different styles. And I kind of feel like I'm just starting to find
Mm,
the niche and the kind of approach for it. And that's through 35 different videos, probably 10, 20 grand spent on editors, and it takes time. But
right.
I'm loving it. I'm absolutely loving it.
I think people underestimate the how long a game it actually is. I
100%.
found, I started using LinkedIn seriously about 7 years ago, and I actually utilized it from getting to a full-time job where I wasn't happy, for a bunch of different reasons, obviously financially, and I was able
Mm,
to build that. It took me a year before I was able to leave that job and get enough clients to match my salary, and then another year before I was able to. But knowing that, I always tell people it's not something, there's no magic pill. You got to show up
mm.
consistently and give that value and position yourself as that person. I was able to, over that period of 2 years, 4x, 5x my income, better, flexibility, all that stuff. But it's a really long game, and people, kind of need that reinforcement.
Yeah, definitely. I think people massively overestimate what they can do in the micro and they underestimate what they can do in the macro. A lot of people set themselves very unachievable goals in a very short term period of time. But they really underestimate the value of just compounding and value stacking over time and giving things for free and building rapport and establishing trust and you know generating authority in a niche that has a lot of opportunities and gaps in, that takes a long time. I've been creating videos on LinkedIn probably for seven, 8 years, maybe. I started 2017. So what's that? Yeah, 8 years. And I'm not at 100K followers. I'm not going viral with every post, but I'm being very intentional with how I spend time on it, and it
Right.
it gets people for my business, and it helps me to live the life that I want to live and support my family, and all the things that are actually really important. Um, but yeah, so I mean, it's 8 years, 8 years on LinkedIn in the game every week, never missed a day.
Wow.
It's
And
work. It's a
it's
lot of
just
work.
success stories like yours, and to an extent, like what I've experienced, that really, I found that, push people, give that, it's nothing like actually saying, here, been there, done that, and just
Mm.
sometimes people are looking for that ROI, looking for that direct correlation. It's almost impossible to kind of thing. And most of the, early work, I found that sometimes it's third degree connections and people who recommend it, or it's how do you find that as well? Direct ROI is very hard to manage with marketing on
I
LinkedIn.
think
And
it depends on it's a big conversation. It depends on how you are measuring that success.
Mhm.
If you're going in with the ROI of you're just going to post and hope and see if something happens, well, then how can you track that? I think anything that you do needs to have a certain outcome or I call it a North Star. There's a point that you're trying to focus on, there's a direction you're trying to go. Otherwise, you are metaphorically jumping on a bus without knowing the direction that it's going in. You're kind of just on the journey and you're experiencing it for what it
yeah,
is, but you don't really know what the point of it is, don't know where you're heading. So I think ROI can be measured in lots of different things. It can be measured in conversations that you start. If you want to start 5 meaningful conversations a week, that's an amazing return of investment. If you want to get 6 figures of new leads in the next year, that's your ROI and that's what you're measuring. But it depends on your goal. If you haven't got a goal, if you haven't got that North Star point, if you don't know what you're doing and why you're doing it, it's going to be very difficult to measure the return that you get. I also think a lot of people underestimate the hidden metrics of success, like trust and like authority and rapport and relationships and even friendships in business, which I know sounds a little bit cheesy, um, but I can I can guarantee, sorry, I can confirm from my experience that 90% of people lurk and 90% of people won't engage and 90% of people won't, you won't even know that they exist, that they're consuming your
yeah,
content. And suddenly, in the middle of nowhere, out of the blue, when you're having the worst month of your life, they'll come through and say, hey, I want to spend 10 grand with you. I've watched your videos for the last year. I don't want to look at anybody else. I just want to work with you. And you kind of go, whoa, where the hell has that come from? But that's years of trust and rapport and value stacking and giving and giving and giving. There's a good saying by, I think it's Gary Vaynerchuk, and he says, jab, 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 right hook. Going for the value, going for the value, going for the value, and then going for that kind of swing with the sales post, or every now and then that'll kind of come back into a right hook for you, and people will start to want to work with you because you've delivered so much value up front.
right.
Good analogy, but yeah, it takes time, mate.
Totally agree with that. I had this one client who I never actually heard. He was apparently connected with me on LinkedIn, following me for years, and then he ended up giving us a really nice project. We flew in the team to Israel.
Mm,
Produced a whole bunch of videos for a big organization. And I said, "You follow?" I had to go actually see that we're connected because most people are shy. They don't have the time or the energy or the, I don't know. But knowing that you're doing the right thing and from experience of others, keep doing it.
mm.
Results are going to follow. My take.
100%. I think it's a commitment thing. I think sometimes you've kind of just got to go with gut feeling, and that's very hard if you are an employee of a business where you're maybe pitching the idea of creating content on LinkedIn to your boss or YouTube or whatever it is, and they want leads, they want cash, but actually you want to build rapport and you want to build trust and you want to build loyalty and community within your followers. They're things that you can't really quantify from a tangible numerical metrical standpoint. You can't say, oh, we've increased trust with Gary 50% more this month because it's not a tangible thing. It's more of an emotional thing. But often it's the emotional things that actually warrant the biggest results. So I think my advice to anybody who is creating and creating and creating and maybe aren't seeing those tangible results yet, just stick through it. My saying is it's okay to rest, but don't quit. If you want to take a week off to think things through and re-strategize and replan, go for it because I think you need to fuel your battery up. But don't ever stop posting because often you don't know how close you are to a big breakthrough with this sort of stuff, and it can happen out of nowhere. So
What do you see the biggest challenges people facing, making meaningful content? You've mentored, hundreds by now. What are the biggest challenges? And if there's one sentence of reinforcement that you could tell them to kind of get people to keep trucking, what would that be?
I think people are getting quite lazy with content. I think people see it as a quick win and they hear all the advice from the big personal brands and the influencers online and the people who have already reached the top 1% or who have already made it in terms of success, and listen to their very arbitrary advice in terms of be consistent and give value and show up every day. The make or break for most people now is the ideas, and it's how you deliver your content. For example, if you're new to content, it might feel like a good idea to film a podcast or to film a sit down chat style video or to film a three top tips video. But there's 100,000 people who've already posted that sort of content today. So, what makes you as a creator or as a marketer of your business or a business owner who's creating videos on the internet, how do you make yourself stand out from everybody else who is posting noise and information and advice on the internet? What can you do differently? And I think that's down to the ideas. It's how bold do you want to go? How far do you want to push the boat out? How close can you get to the line of virality or something that's trending, or what can you do differently? I think is the biggest thing.
There's a nice quote I heard: "The better something works, the more beautiful it is." And people sometimes tend to get bogged down with the polish and want to create that professional video. And I'm kind of shooting myself in the foot because that's what I do for a living. But I want people, I think a rising tide raises all boats. And if
Mm,
people just create more content and realize the value of just getting on camera or creating content in one form or another on video, creating that personal connection.
mm.
It's that simplicity and function over external polish, and that's what I found that you're giving your mentees, your group. So where can people find out more about your company and perhaps join?
Yeah, definitely. So hit me up on LinkedIn. Just search Jack Gaisford or type in the Content Club on Google and it will come up. We're a big community of small business owners and creators who are all posting videos on the internet to market their business and to stand out online. That's essentially what we do. Go and check it out. I can tell you more information there. And happy to help where I can.
Thank you so much for your time.
Amazing. No worries, Avram. Thanks so much. Appreciate
Have a
it.
good one. Bye bye.
Cheers, buddy.